on the GoPro Radio Network. I'm here with B.C. Saunders, not B.C. as in before Christ, Byron C.
Byron C.
As
That's
of
right.
2013.
That's right, exactly.
Is you listening?
I is, baby. I'm listening.
Is you understanding?
I'm catching it.
All right.
I'm enjoying it.
I have to say, like, I'm really enjoying this show.
Yes.
It's really good to talk to Ralph Pointer. Again, lynnstewart.org, people to find out more information about Lynn's case, as well as her health, and how you can make a difference and keep this at the forefront of the movement. And of course, we talked with Maya Azusena, my former high school classmate, who has just become this really fantastic woman of the world, songstress, the face in front of and behind many different movements for social justice. Very, very proud of her. Again, she's going to be at Jenny's Red Rooster in Harlem on February 14th for Valentine's Day. So make sure you check out that show. You don't want to miss her live. If you think the video was great, she's a firecracker on stage.
She's got a great voice.
She's great, and just a beautiful person, a beautiful spirit. And now we turn the show to yet another triumph. Today's been a day of triumph and just positive energy. I'm in studio with, well, first of all, let me preface this by saying, folks, I'm not a big fan of, law enforcement. I'm not a big fan of the so-called justice system, prison industrial, because they just, they've had a history of being against the little person, particularly the little person of color.
Yes.
But occasionally, and very, very occasionally, they get it right.
History is made.
They get it right. Just recently, the U.S. District Court, Eastern District Court of New York, has refused to grant immunity to a Child Protective Services caseworker from a New York City lawsuit. Now, normally, Child Protective Service caseworkers are granted limited immunity in lawsuits arising from their duties. They have some protection from ACS in terms of, okay, I might have made a mistake, but listen, ultimately I'm trying to do the right thing, save some kids, keep them out of, unhealthy environments, right? However, and just recently, Sonny Southerland took his case to the Supreme Court and won the right to be able to sue a caseworker individually for not handling their job properly. And Sonny's here with us today, joining us to tell us about this, what I consider to be a landmark case. How you doing, Sonny?
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here, and thank you also for the work that you do, because also, and I'm going to let Sonny talk, but not only was he fighting for his own family, fighting his own case, this is not the extent of Sonny's work. He's part of an organization called the People's Advocacy Group that has for decades been fighting for other people whose families have been attacked by ACS and the city, to help them, whether it's through pro se work or just being a voice of dissent against the injustices, against the corruption that's been allowed thus far, and has really been a stand-up person in the community. So,
Well, I like that part.
yes. So even though he's sitting down now in the studio,
Still a stand-up kind of guy.
but he's a stand-up kind of guy.
Well, thank both of you.
So, Sonny, tell the story in as few bullet points as you can, just to bring people up to speed, why this is such an important case and what this means for your family and what this means for the struggle that you've been engaged in for the over 15 years.
I'm just enjoying listening to you talk. But here's the story in short. A caseworker comes into my house with a warrant, removed my children, and the warrant had other children's names on it. Later I find out that he lied to a judge to get that warrant, to take my kids out and place them in the foster care system. I fight through family court, which is a joke. They call that kangaroo court. And, of course, didn't win. Only 16 out of 1,000 cases win in family court anyway, so I didn't expect to win, and decided I have to do something on my own. And I went in and filed a federal lawsuit in the federal district court. And, of course, they dismissed it. I appealed it, won on appeal. They dismissed it again. I appealed again and won on appeal again. They made offers. I refused to offer. And I explained this to my children, that I want to change the system. I want to change the policy. I want to change their practices. I want to make sure that my great-grandchildren, that this doesn't happen to my great-grandchildren or anybody else's children.
But who are you to take the whole system on? I mean,
well, I didn't feel like I was taking on the system. I just felt compelled that what they did was wrong, and I need to change it.
Well, I asked that in an attempt to just sort of voice what, would be the typical response to that? Because most folks feel like one person can't take it on. And I'm not discrediting the need for movements, but occasionally one person can, set an example, be the example, live the example, to be an inspiration for everybody else around them.
Well, I didn't look at it on that grand scale. These are my children. I got to do something. I can't just sit back. And I could imagine what my ancestors went through with slavery. But I'm pretty sure that there were some successful slaves back in then. We listen to stories about Harriet Tubman and Amistad and all that, and how they fought the system, and even the Dred Scott decision. The guy had enough courage to challenge the system 150 years ago. I mean, he wasn't successful, but he at least tried.
And this guy, Timothy Wu.
Yeah, Timothy Wu was the caseworker that removed the children.
Now,
and I just want to cut you off,
please.
and he made false statements to a family court judge to get that warrant.
That's what I was going to say. It's not a simple case where it's like this guy, made a mistake on some paperwork. He, according to the reports that I've been reading, he withheld information so that he would be able to do what it was.
He misled the court to
Right.
think that my children were being abused by me, and that he needed to get a warrant to come in to remove my children, when in fact it was my oldest daughter's siblings that were in a pre-adoptive home somewhere else that had a bad case history that he used to get the warrant to come in and take my children. And their names were never on the warrant.
What's chilling about this is the seeming impunity with which people will just ruin. I mean, this guy didn't stop to think about what would happen to them. Come on, and if you work for ACS, you've got to know about the reports of abuse in foster homes, okay?
Yeah.
The psychological trauma that kids go through being separated from their families, because your kids weren't just separated from you. They were put in all these different foster homes, so they're
spread all
separated
over
from each other.
the whole city. Of course,
unbelievable.
The visits got misconstrued. I had to fight to get visitation with them. They were abused in all these different homes, and it's a mess. And now that they're home, I'm still dealing with the after effects of that.
The other thing that's ridiculous about this is that if you watch any television show, you're always going to see that caricature of the black man that doesn't take care of his family. I mean, you would think that these people would say, hey, something's not right here. Here's a man that hasn't given up, again, in over 15 years, that continues to confront us, that continues to assert that, his children were taken illegally from the home. It just the hypocrisy within the system, and also within the current mainstream, perception of black people and black families, it just boggles my mind.
Well, I just want to say to you, Iyanna, and Byron, is that what is happening in these agencies, when one agency deems something, all the other agencies that get involved, they go along with that first determination of the first agency that had contact with the situation. So I was fighting everyone based on Timothy Wu's assessment of what he thought was going on. And it was really just a textbook scenario. Once they realized that they did the wrong thing and they acted wrongly, in my opinion, they just covered up their liability. So they had to find me to be an abusive parent. They had to tell me that I had to go for counseling and all types of other things if I wanted to get my children back. But that's like a catch-22. Because now, if I go to counseling, guess what? I have to agree that I did something to stay in counseling.
Right.
Else that doesn't work. And then if I do that, then they come back into court and they say, see, we told you he was guilty.
But it's just like what's happening with Lynn Stewart, too. Because
Yes.
the fact that she's being punished because she refused to admit guilt for
Right.
something she didn't do, they punish you
Yes.
for having dignity.
Right.
And,
You have the nerve to have dignity and integrity.
and you're not just fighting the system, you're fighting the wealth of the system, because at some point you're up against a battery of attorneys and judges and the system itself.
Right.
And they can't be wrong.
Right, and going to the Supreme Court, folks, is not cheap. You have got to have some sponsored and supported to even get you through that front door. So a 16-year trail for you to stay on, and my God, the determination, and then have
But I
that
had
victory.
to. These are my children.
That's right.
If you don't do this for your children, who are you
Who
going to do it for?
That's
Yeah.
And
right.
that's the thing to me that's most touching about this, because we can argue the politics of it all day long. We can talk about the fact that you know, he was liable, this sets a precedent, which is great, you know, politically, especially, again, Sonny, for the people that you're helping, who are seeing this and understanding that, you know, occasionally you can win, but more importantly, this is what happens when you stand up. But the thing that I think has been missing throughout all the narratives that I've been reading is just like what happens to children that are denied family, that are denied.
There are many children out there that are floating around because their parents were beaten down. They're already beaten down by the system, not having a job, lack of education, and can't fit in, and whatever family dynamics occurred in their life. So now they come in and they're embraced by this system that's hostile to them and unknown to them. And everybody's working against them, taking their children, putting them here, putting them there, putting them on drugs, and putting them in different situations in harm's way. Do you know how many kids are killed in foster family homes that go undocumented? Do you know how many abuses and assaults take place in foster care homes that are undocumented? The police don't do anything. When my kids were being abused and I made complaints to the police, they wouldn't do anything.
But how is it that the actual biological parents are being investigated with a fine-tooth comb, but the foster homes in which most of the abuse takes place?
Because the foster home parents are participating in this whole corrupt scheme. Right. It is a scheme. And I just want to mention, and I want to say big ups, and may she rest in peace, former Senator Nancy Safer, who brought this whole thing to kind of like in 5 minutes, she was able to explain the whole corrupt system, the judges, the psychiatrists, psychologists, the caseworkers, and how they all work together to pull in that money, that funding from the federal government to run this whole scheme of what they call in the best interest of children, which is really not.
You made history.
Yep.
Your name is in the record, and this should not be swept under the rug so that it's forgotten. We have to keep that story alive.